there was a moment in this strike where people from the city, strikers, women and children and mill owners and clergy and government leaders all went to give testimony to Congress in 1912. And that testimony that they gave was critical in the changes that were enacted. And I just have to wonder that if I was a woman or a child or a worker of any kind beginning to give my testimony, how different I might have felt if you were sitting across listening to that testimony. So we have come a very far way, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you all, and I want to thank Mary Ann for that really kind introduction, but also to commend the Paley family for its long-term commitment to this city. The Merrimack Valley is home to some remarkable communities, and not the least of which we are made better by those families who started here in the early days of the Industrial Revolution, but who have stayed throughout our history and found ways to continue to contribute and advance the well-being of these remarkable communities. So it's great to be here with Mary Ann and again to see the long-term commitment of the Paley family and so many others in this room. I also want to congratulate the Lawrence History Center, the Bread and Roses Centennial Committee, and all the organizations and individuals that are contributing to making this year a year of remembrance and reflection and pride on this historic event. The fabulous exhibit that we're seeing here today captures the faces and stories of the families who toiled at the mills in hopes of achieving a better life. And as I was sitting here and looking at this photograph, I really was struck by the remarkable joy that comes from fueling a revolution and a change that betters the lives of the people of a community. It's women in the front, but if you look deep into the picture, you can see that this spirit, this revolutionary spirit, is shared by everyone who was coming forward on that historic day. They stood up for their fellow workers. They were united despite language and ethnicity. And what a lesson we can take from that. These courageous workers were not afraid to work hard, but they were also not afraid to speak up and walk out when harsh working conditions became too much to bear. The very fact that children were working in unsafe conditions is something that we would find incomprehensible today. And I am proud of the fact that the federal government played a role which led to vast changes in how we treat workers. Workers' rights were put on the national radar screen by the men, women, and children from Lawrence who testified in Congress. And that is why today I will be submitting a statement on the centennial of the strike for the congressional record. At a later date, I'll present a framed copy to the Lawrence History Center, but would like to share my statement with you now. And unfortunately, we speak a little bit of legislative ease, but Mr. Speaker, today, January 12th, 2012, marks the 100th anniversary of the start of the historic Bread and Roses strike in Lawrence, Massachusetts, a community I am so proud to represent. On that cold January day 100 years ago, brave men and women took to the streets in a march for workers' rights. The strike lasted for 8 weeks and captured the interest of the entire nation. After the Massachusetts legislature reduced the work week from 56 to 54 hours on January 1, 1912, to help workers, mill owners refused to adjust pay rates to maintain workers' meager take-home pay, which averaged only $8 a week in some mills. Instead, they insisted on increased productivity to make up for the 2 lost hours. As payday approached, workers noted the expected pay cuts and walked out in a wage protest that blossomed into a fight for better conditions at home and at work. New immigrants to this country from a myriad of ethnic groups, of which the Merrimack Valley is home to so many, marched alongside native New Englanders as they called for decent wages to provide their families with bread and roses too, representing respect for them as human beings, not just cheap labor. It became a rallying point for fair labor practices and workplace safety issues across this country. Over the next months, violent conflicts erupted, resulting in at least one death. Children were evacuated out of the city to rural communities here, and we have a gentleman here today whose father was charged with taking those young people to Vermont. Congressional hearings were held on the owners' strike, at which workers testified about the deplorable working and living conditions and the use of child labor by the mill. And President William Howard Taft ordered an investigation into the conditions of industrial towns and cities throughout the nation. The subsequent national publicity was an impetus for the mill owners to settle, and on March 12, 2012, they agreed to the strikers' demand for a 15% pay increase, overtime pay, amnesty for strikers, and a grievance committee. The changes forged in Lawrence were followed by pay hikes for 150,000 textile workers throughout New England and shaped national public policy. This esteemed body, in fact, has responded by enacting laws over the years that protect children as well as other workers from unscrupulous employers. This year, Lawrence will celebrate its place in history with exhibits, academic symposiums, and the annual Bread and Roses Festival held on Labor Day each year. As the nation faces high unemployment and a challenging economic climate, it is important to remember the gains in workers' rights that were paid for with the blood, sweat, and tears of the textile workers in Lawrence. And so we do today. I want to thank you all for asking me to be here with you today. I look forward to joining you all again as the Centennial year progresses and as we commemorate the revolution in labor rights that began here in Lawrence, Massachusetts 100 years ago. You have so much to be proud of. Thank you.